The dogs and the cats and the monkeys are a lot like you. The chickens and the cows and the geese, they're a lot like me. We all just want to be. We all just want to be. We all just want to live happy and free. So welcome once again to Animals Have Rights. First, let me give you a couple news items. These are just news items, in fact, that I pulled off the internet just before I stepped into the studio. First things, from just less than a week ago, Waupaca judge says that the man, or one of the men that was charged with the deaths of the deer, you might remember last winter when I think it was three men, two brothers and another man, and one of the brothers' girlfriends, I'm not sure, were on snowmobiles and they ran these deer down. Do you remember that? And they ended up just really abusing them and killing them, and it was quite a mess. And there was a lot of outcry from the snowmobilers and a lot of people that care about animals. But the judge has ruled. He says that there's three separate cases. And the judge says that the man charged with the deer deaths was overcharged. It says that the man accused of running down the deer with a snowmobile should not have been charged with both animal mistreatment and illegal hunting. Apparently, if you're illegally hunting, it's impossible to mistreat an animal, or if you're mistreating an animal, then you're not illegally hunting. I guess illegally mistreating an animal would something you could do while you were legally hunting. The legal theory eludes me. The circuit judge, Philip Kirk, is giving the district attorney's office until Monday, actually that was yesterday, to drop either one set of charges or the other against Rory Kinsey, who's 24 years old. So in other hunting news, the Wisconsin Senate and even the Assembly have now approved the bill that's going to allow 10-year-olds to hunt here in Wisconsin. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources estimates that it could sell an additional 9,000 licenses to young hunters under the new bill, Fox 11 News reports. The TV station said that the measure, which passed both the Senate and the Assembly, is aimed at reversing slumping deer hunting numbers. Now, to me, this sounds like child abuse. I think that if we can get kids at a young enough age out killing deer, that they'll go on to be lifetime hunters, and encouraging kids to go out and kill for fun sounds sort of sick and twisted to me. Let's see. The current law allows 12-year-olds to hunt if a parent or guardian is within sight, but this one, the child would have to be accompanied by an adult. The adult must be at least 18 years old. That's a good thought. That's very reassuring that an 18-year-old is going to take a 10-year-old out and they're going to have a gun, or actually a rifle, between them, and they'll just go out and blast the heck out of whatever they can find. Let's see. And a little bit better news, you may remember that the gray wolf was delisted from the endangered species list. There's apparently about 500 in Wisconsin. And as soon as it was delisted, the Department of Natural Resources issued a bunch of hunting permits, actually 39 shooting permits they issued, and it ended up 2 wolves got killed. At least 2 were reported killed. But anyway, there's been a revision on that, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service agreed Monday to reinstate federal protection of wolves in the upper Great Lakes region. They said that they're simply afraid that there's going to be too much poaching, and that in fact the wolves will, many of them will be killed as people go out and just simply have a good time shooting wolves. So that's a little bit of good news. It's not clear what's going to happen. There's going to be continue the push to delist the wolves, and of course the DNR and the hunters around the state that are encouraging children to shoot deer are also going to be encouraging the delisting of the wolves. So not only can the kids go out and shoot deer, they'll also be able to go out and shoot essentially what amounts to a large dog. So that'll be great fun for the children of Wisconsin. Let me see. There's going to be a video at the end of the show that I will talk to you about, and once we hear our legal report. And then the bulk of the show that I want to talk to you about today is going to be something that you need to do, because I think that probably if the university, we're back to the university, my favorite subject, if the university is allowed to continue on its current course, I think they're going to be putting you and your children at grave risk. But more about that in a minute. And so I'm glad to be back in the studio alongside my colleague, Leslie Hamilton, who's now going to talk to us about animals in the law today. Is that right, Leslie? Take it away.
Thank you, Rick. It's good to be back, and good evening, viewers. Does this mean that if my 9-year-old shoots my neighbor, he'll just be guilty of hunting illegally and out of season and an improper species? What are the limits now on the charge of illegal hunting? Apparently the snowmobilers can run down a deer using a snowmobile out of hunting season, because I think it was in January or February, and that's the charge instead of animal maltreatment. Could we have illegal hunting then as a charge other than murder? Something to think about. The issue I'm going to discuss with you this evening involves something much more prosaic and not as difficult to figure out, and that is, do you have a dog living next door to you or a couple of doors down that is chained up most of the day, most of the night, and is driving you crazy with his or her barking? I remember when my daughter was very young and was still taking naps, and her naps were very important to her, and they were equally important to me because they gave me an opportunity to get some other things done around the house. We had a neighbor with a little beagle who was a darling dog, but the neighbor decided the best place for the beagle would be chained up in the backyard, which meant that my daughter, if she was able to get to sleep for her nap, was soon awoken by the sounds of the dog barking, or was not able to get to sleep in the first place. I think a lot of people probably dream of having their idyllic property out in the country where they can enjoy the peace and quiet, the sound of the wind in the trees and the birds singing, maybe a few chainsaws now and then. However, the incessant sound of the neighbor's barking dog was enough to drive them right back into the city. There are various solutions to this problem. You can always go next door and start a fight with your neighbor. You could maybe prank calls, the hang-up calls at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and 4 a.m. to give the neighbor a little taste of what you're going through on your sleepless nights. Another idea might be to take your stereo speakers and put them out in the backyard and crank them up as loud as you can and put on a good Wisconsin polka 24 hours a day. Another idea I thought would work would be to have all the neighbors over every Saturday night for a very loud party, but not invite the neighbor with the barking dog. All of these are very good ideas, some of them more legal than others. Probably the better idea, however, is the one I'm going to talk to you about this evening, and that is take advantage of your power as a voter, especially in local elections. I think our local representatives are much more attuned to the needs of their constituents and much more likely to take seriously your requests for changes in law. There has been a number of laws that have been passed all around the country. I think in 30 states we have over 100 communities now that have passed laws either completely prohibiting the tethering or chaining of dogs outside, or are regulating the tethering or chaining of dogs. Why is tethering or chaining of dogs outside wrong or inhumane? Well, aside from the problems that I described earlier, where the neighbors are going to lose sleep and probably you'll be calling the police and asking them to come by your neighbor's house to do something about that dog. It's also very harmful to the dog, and I think all of the people listening tonight who love their dogs are the last people in the world who would chain the dog outside for hours at a time. They understand that dogs are very social animals and that it's extremely damaging to them psychologically to be chained outside or kept in a pen away from their pack. And in fact, your family, your human family, is the pack for your canine family member. And when a dog is separated from its pack, it barks and howls, trying to bring the pack back or find out where the pack is as they respond in kind. Oftentimes, dogs that are chained outside for hours at a time end up being dogs that are neglected in many other ways. Not only their need for interaction with their humans being neglected, but their need for food and grooming, veterinary care, water. Their water bowls are often tipped over almost immediately and they're not refreshed. So actually tethering a dog outside for any length of time is inhumane. And no less than the federal government has actually issued a statement that indicating that the U.S. Department of Agriculture concluded that the continuous confinement of dogs by a chain or tether is inhumane. And there have been various statistical studies and analyses of dog bites and dog attacks around the United States. And invariably, they find that dogs that are chained account for a substantial portion, if not the majority, of attacks. And that is because the dog that's chained will learn to viciously guard its territory. It feels vulnerable on that chain in that it can't escape if it were to be attacked by another animal. And that vulnerability then creates a fear, and fear creates an aggressive behavior or attitude on the part of that animal. From a book entitled Fatal Dog Attacks, The Stories Behind the Statistics, Karen DeLeese said that chaining a dog is arguably the single most dangerous condition in which to maintain a dog. Statistically, chained dogs are more dangerous than free-running packs of dogs. So if you're concerned about the abuse of your tax dollars that are used for the repeated police calls generated by barking dogs, if you are a dog lover and you're concerned about the physical and psychological health of the dogs that live in your community, or if you are a parent of a child and you're concerned about that child's safety, you have all of those reasons to ask your alderperson or your county board supervisor to sponsor an ordinance that will either completely prohibit the chaining of dogs outside or will place very strict and clear limits or regulations on the tethering or chaining of dogs. Several communities have simply banned completely the chaining of dogs outside. Tethering is generally defined, or chaining, as the fastening of a dog to a stationary object or a stake, and as I indicated, usually in the owner's backyard or on their property. The Georgetown community near Washington, D.C. Has recently completely banned the tethering of dogs, and they actually require that the dog have at least 150 square foot enclosure in which to walk around and jump around and lie down. Unfortunately, when people then decide if they're not going to be able to chain their dogs, they're then going to put their dog in a crate in the backyard. The dog is no better off. So when you do approach your local representative for a chaining ordinance, make sure that it doesn't result in a dog being put in a very small pen outside all day long or in a crate. Other communities have put an hour limit, for example, only 1 hour within any 24-hour period, or perhaps in some of the southern states, they strictly prohibit the tethering of dogs outside between the hours of, for example, 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., 365 days a year. Unfortunately, the more creative you become with some of these anti-tethering laws, the more difficult they might be to enforce. Because if you, for example, say that a dog cannot be tethered outside for more than 4 hours, an animal control officer or a police officer can't sit outside someone's home for 4 hours and 15 minutes waiting to give that person a ticket. Also, what you can do is regulate the type of chain or tether or harness that a dog is attached to. Instead of a collar, which often result in injuries to a dog's neck, and many animal control officers will tell you about the vast number of dogs they have found with collars actually grown into the skin or embedded into the dog's neck, require that a dog have a harness instead of a collar. Another requirement is to have a maximum weight to the chain. A few years ago, I was involved in defending the seizure of the Lowry pit bull fighting dogs here in Dane County. All of those dogs were tied up individually to a doghouse with a logging chain. Very, very heavy chain, very thick, heavy collars. The reason for that was to get the dogs to increase their jaw strength, their neck strength, their shoulder strength in order to prepare them for the fighting pit. Another requirement would be to make sure that the tether or chain is a minimum of 10 feet or perhaps 5 times the length of the dog from the dog's nose to the base of the dog's tail. Then other requirements that are already found in the law, that is that they always have access to fresh water, that they have access to shade other than an enclosure that they might have, various rules, ordinances regarding the type of enclosure. All of these are options that are available to your local government and are best enforced by police and by animal control officers. And I believe that you will have the strong tide of public opinion in your favor. All it takes is a phone call. Maybe you, a neighbor, a friend, make an appointment with your supervisor, with your alderperson, ask them to sponsor the ordinance. Go on the website of the Humane Society of the United States, where you will find some sample ordinances that have already been passed around the country. It's time that we did this for our animal companions. And that's it for tonight's Animals in the Law today. And that's the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you. Back to you, Rick.
Well, maybe if you can't figure out anything other than keeping a dog on a chain out in the backyard, maybe you should just decide not to have a dog. So I don't know if you saw the news when it came out, but there's been an awful lot of talk about the stimulus package and how we're going to get jobs, more jobs in the state. And so the University of Wisconsin has stepped up to the plate, of course, and they have a plan for creating jobs. And what they want to do is they have submitted, let's see, they want, this is from an article in the April 25th, the Saturday, April 25th Wisconsin State Journal, and it starts out with the line, "A new facility to house rodents and a place to study infectious disease and primates are among 2 bids UW-Madison is making for federal stimulus money. A UW committee has chosen 5 projects totaling $57 million to submit in a competition for National Institutes of Health grants, which are specifically earmarked for biomedical research facilities. $10 million for a 3-suite facility to conduct experimental animal surgery, $2 million for the Primate Center to study infectious diseases in monkeys, $15 million for an addition to the Wisconsin National Primate Research Center. That's probably the expansion there. They want to build on where the exhibition hall was going to be that they stopped. And the Harlow Center for the Harlow Lab, they want to expand that and renovate. And then they want to do 2 floors that are going to be to study cardiovascular and regenerative medicine, also in using animals. But the key thing here that caught my eye was that they want to expand their infectious disease facilities for studying infectious disease in monkeys. Now, this is pretty important. The Alliance for Animals has requested a copy of that grant, and the university is stonewalling us. They don't really, it appears they're not anxious to get this information out into the public. So basically, this is my job for you. Contact your older people, your older woman or your alderman, your county, Dane County supervisors, or even any place in Wisconsin, your supervisors, and ask them to ask the university for a copy of that grant, because the university's history with studying infectious diseases, especially using animals, has been one that's pretty frightening. And I just put together a brief history of this, and I'm sure I'm missing all sorts of instances. Let me just start with saying that this is from a June 5th, less than a month ago actually, 2009 Wisconsin State Journal article. The University of Wisconsin-Madison Chancellor, this is the title of the article, University of Wisconsin-Madison Chancellor acts to improve safety. UW announces that biosafety procedures under investigation by NIH following an NIH major action violation. Now, an NIH major action is an experiment in which drug resistance is bioengineered into a disease organism. Do you get that? Say you're studying Ebola, and you want to genetically manipulate the Ebola organism so that it is resistant to whatever drugs that we could use right now to treat it. Say antibiotic resistance. Or you're studying the flu, and you want to engineer resistance to the drug. You want to make the germ immune to the drug that's normally used to treat it. Can you imagine? I mean, this is any simple disease that we do that with, and if that organism escapes from the lab, then you have something that's pretty serious because there's no drugs to treat it. That's why it's called by NIH a major event, a major action. And major actions require approval from the director of the NIH. But here at the university, there was a major action violation. Now, let me just real quickly show you what I found on the NIH or on the university website. This is brand new. They just put this up. This is on their infectious disease oversight committee's website. And it says, this is an advisory bulletin. This is just brand new on their website. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, has determined that any experiments utilizing recombinant DNA that involve the deliberate transfer of drug resistance into a select agent. A select agent is one of these organisms that's really, really serious if it were to escape from the labs, must be submitted to the Intergovernmental Select Agents and Toxins Advisory Committee. And then they have this, I'm going to hold this up, they have this bold printed and in all caps. It must be approved before the experiment can be conducted, even if the drug is never a treatment modality for the disease caused by the select agent. If you have any questions about this, check Jeff Zebrowski. So they just put this up. And they put this up. Why did they put it up? Well, as you can imagine, because there was a violation here at the university. Now, it's not just a violation of the major action thing that happened, but it says that, according to the Wisconsin State Journal, this is really coming from Biddy Martin, the new chancellor, who's a big supporter of this sort of research. She says, UW-Madison is not in compliance with NIH biosafety guidelines because of gross and chronic understaffing of its biosafety committee and inspectors. Now, that's pretty dangerous. And they're wanting to expand the lab right here, right just a block off Regent. So, listen to this. Here's an article from January 9. This is from the Associated Press. And it says, it starts out, it says, the University of Wisconsin-Madison has quietly decided to stop manufacturing its signature aerosol chambers used for researching infectious diseases, which were involved in a few dangerous lab accidents nationwide. Now get this. These chambers are designed by the engineering department here at the university, and the chambers are sold. There's only like 18 or 19 of them have been in use around the United States because only a few labs are certified or qualified, they claim, to study these select agents, these very deadly diseases. And so the university You didn't see this article. This story wasn't covered very widely, but they've decided to stop manufacturing these chambers. They're called Madison chambers. And they stopped manufacturing them because the College of Engineering is shutting down the business after an internal audit found it was poorly managed and carried the potential for huge liability costs in the event that the chambers failed, exposing researchers to toxic agents, to say nothing of the public. Now, on April 12th, in 2006, an aerosol chamber mishap, a Madison aerosol chamber mishap at Texas A&M University caused a researcher to be infected with the bioweapons agent Brucella. Texas A&M University then violated federal law by not reporting the case to CDC. So you get that. They were using this foolproof chamber manufactured here in Madison. They had an accident and they didn't report it. So now they're wanting to expand and build a new disease lab studying monkeys here, right just a block off Regent, and they're going to tell you that it's going to be perfectly safe. Right. Now here's a thing about the Madison chamber. It's pretty interesting. The Madison aerosol chamber is a specialized type of lab equipment. The chamber's used to infect animals with disease through their lungs. Cultures of organisms causing tuberculosis or the bioweapons agent anthrax, Q fever, brucella, and others are placed in a part of the device called the nebulizer, which mixes the agents with air. The resulting aerosol is directed into a metal chamber in which the animals have been placed on the racks. The animals then breathe in the agent. The integrity of the complicated device's O-rings, seals, and other fittings is absolutely critical to preventing the aerosols from escaping the chamber and causing accidental infections. But the Madison chamber, when it was used in Seattle, or the Madison chamber in Seattle, leaks badly. And in 2004, it caused 3 laboratory-acquired tuberculosis infections at a BSL-3 lab shared by the Corixa Corporation and the Infectious Disease Research Institute. In 2003, the Seattle lab began using a Madison aerosol chamber to infect guinea pigs with tuberculosis. Several batches were exposed over a period of months. A serious problem was detected in March 2004 when 3 employees who previously tested negative for tuberculosis came back with positive tests or conversions indicating they'd been exposed to the agent. And of course, it wasn't then until 2009, just recently, that after all of these multiple failures of this secure biohazard cabinet that was being built here on campus, did the university finally decide that the liability was just becoming too great. Or let's go to 2007, when a study of Ebola was halted here. And it says, the headline from the Associated Press says, facilities at Wisconsin University were not secure, NIH says. Madison, Wisconsin. University of Wisconsin-Madison research on the deadly Ebola virus was conducted for a year in a less than secure laboratory. Turned out to be Yoshihiro Kawaoka's lab. And the NIH had to alert the university to the fact that it was violating the federal regulations on this. We don't know what they're going to be studying here at the university, and we've asked for a copy of the grant, but remember, they're stonewalling and they're not giving us a copy. We don't know what they're claiming they're going to be studying. You need to contact your older people, your supervisors, and ask them to ask the university for a copy of the grant because they're stonewalling us. It's all BS. It's all about money. You can't have done this stuff since mid-1970s, getting millions of dollars. Is very little. Kaufman has very, very little human research going on. It's almost all monkey stuff. It's all cruel. And since the university destroyed all of the videos showing what was going on in their labs, the only thing we can do is show you what goes on at monkeys and other labs.
bye.